Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, let's jump right into this one because today we're turning the pages of a deeply chilling story that really exposes the true, horrifying cost of vengeance. We're going to trace a narrative that takes us from totally innocent childhood promises straight into the absolute darkest corners of human obsession. And I've got to tell you, the way this tragedy unfolds is as methodical as it is terrifying. So let's get into it.
I want you to consider this opening philosophy for a second. Revenge looks beautiful from the outside, but inside there's only darkness. This perfectly sets the stage for our explainer today. Because hatred, it's insidious. It slowly eats away at a person's ability to think clearly. It literally steals the truth right from their eyes and just fills their heart with poison. And as we'll see today, a person completely consumed by revenge almost never realizes that they aren't just fighting an enemy. They're actually actively destroying themselves until it's entirely too late.
All right, let's start with part one, a mother's dark secret.
Picture this. To the outside world, Kusum is just your average, quiet woman living in an old, well-kept house with her college-age son, Arav. But Arav knows something else. He knows she slips out every single night. No reasons, no answers. And he never really asks, mainly because he's caught this strange, terrifying glint in her eye that makes questioning her feel, honestly, kind of dangerous. Well, that underlying domestic calm completely shatters the afternoon Arav brings a college friend home, a girl named Neha. Kusum welcomes her warmly enough, but during their casual chat, she casually asks about Neha's appearance. Neha says her father is Vivek Sinha and her mother is Riya. In that exact split second, Kusum's fingers grip her chair so tightly her knuckles turn white. You can feel this sinister internal shift. She politely excuses herself to the kitchen, only to come back with a chilling, practically murderous smile and a plate of homemade sweets. For Neha, it's just a sweet gesture, but for Kusum, these sweets are a literal Trojan horse. Now, this wasn't just a one-off thing. Neha keeps visiting, and Kusum keeps feeding her these sweets, specifically packing some for Neha's mother, Riya, to take home. And pretty soon, Riya falls mysteriously, desperately ill. Arav senses something is horribly wrong and finally decides to search his mother's room one night while she's out on one of her secret errands. The creeping dread here is just palpable, because what he uncovers is a literal stash. He finds a water glass with the name Neha written on it, a bizarre bound packet of hair, and a handkerchief marked with the name Riya. The fact that this dark magic is so procedural and tangible makes it incredibly terrifying. This wasn't just some evil thought floating around her head. It was a physical, active, calculated ritual. Which brings us to part two, the bitter past. So when Arav confronts his mom about this horrifying discovery, she doesn't apologize. She actually laughs, because this hatred wasn't born yesterday. To really understand this, we have to rewind 2 decades to a village called Chandrapur, where Kusum and Vivek were childhood sweethearts. They dreamed of this whole life together, and Vivek promised to marry her and take her to the city. But years later, he moved to the city alone, and the calls just stopped. Shortly after that, he came back, only to cold-heartedly tell Kusum he was marrying a wealthy coworker named Riya. Just abandoned her. Years go by, she was married off to another man, only to be tragically widowed when her husband died in a factory fire. Then, skip to just months ago, a chance encounter in the city happens. Kusum spots Vivek and Riya together. They're happy, successful, and Vivek doesn't show a single shred of guilt or even bother to ask how she's doing. And that right there, that was the spark that ignited the whole inferno. It's like looking at 2 completely different universes. The contrast between the realities over the years is just staggering. While Kusum was widowed early, struggling as a single mother, and constantly trapped by the trauma of her past, Vivek was living in this perfect little bubble. He had a thriving career, he was happily married, and he remained completely, totally oblivious to the massive emotional damage he had caused. This dramatic irony is exactly what helps us understand the seed of her intense, overwhelming jealousy. For Kusum, it wasn't just a broken heart anymore. It was a feeling of utter cosmic injustice. She decided right then and there to snatch away his every joy, exactly like he had done to her. Moving into section 3. The deadly curse. Transitioning back to the present, we see exactly how Kusum weaponized that pain. Remembering old village tales, she didn't just harbor some resentment. No, she actively sought out the dark arts. Remember those nightly excursions Arav noticed? She was secretly learning black magic. It's a dark, supernatural practice used to inflict harm or absolute ruin on other people. And Kusum wielded it with horrifying precision.
Think back to those quote-unquote innocent sweets she basically forced Neha to take home to her mom. Yeah, they were cursed. Ria's mysterious illness wasn't a medical failure at all. It was the direct result of Kusum's dark rituals. Ria's condition rapidly deteriorated, the medications completely failed, and after a lot of agonizing suffering, she tragically died. Kusum's first stage of vengeance was officially complete. Now, with Ria gone, you'd think that might be the end of it, but no, only one target remains. When Arav finds out Ria has died, he is absolutely devastated. He rushes to his mother, practically begging her to stop, assuming her revenge is finally fulfilled now that Vivek is completely broken. But Kusum, she feels zero remorse. Her eyes are just stone cold. She looks at Arav and says, "No, now it is Neha's turn." She immediately shifts all of her dark focus directly onto the daughter, fully intending to leave Vivek with absolutely nothing. And this brings us to a massive, suspenseful question. Will Kusum's thirst for revenge spare her own son's happiness? Arav literally drops to his knees. He pleads with his mother. He loves Neha. They had plans for the future. He's begging her to spare the woman he loves, even promising to keep her horrifying secret if she just stops the magic right now. It is such a desperate, heart-wrenching plea from a son just trying to save the absolute last shred of his mother's humanity. And that leads us to our final act, Section 4, the ultimate price. We are entering the tragic climax of our explainer here, and I want to warn you, this is where a mother's blind obsession backfires in the most horrific way you can imagine. The dark forces she summoned, they cannot simply be turned off just because it gets inconvenient. Kusum actually locks Arab in his room to silence him. When a grieving, totally exhausted Neha comes over, Kusum plays the comforting mother role and feeds her the final cursed food. Neha goes home and falls violently ill, showing the exact same horrifying symptoms as her mom. Arab eventually breaks out. He desperately rushes to try and save her, but the magic is just too strong. Neha dies in absolute agony, and then the final domino falls. Arab, completely shattered by the loss of the woman he loved and the sheer, unyielding evil of his own mother, hangs himself in his grief. Black magic is a path of ruin. It spares no one. Man, did Kusum find that out the hard way. She wanted to completely obliterate Vivek's world. And to be fair, she did. But in doing so, she ignited a fire that burned her own house down to the ashes. Her son, her only companion, and really her only reason for living through all those years of hardship, he was gone, driven to his death as a direct consequence of her own hands. By trying to destroy another family, she entirely obliterated her own. We conclude our explainer today with this truly chilling final reality: a mind destroyed in darkness. Having lost literally everything, Kusum's sanity completely fractures. She spends her remaining days just sitting alone in her kitchen, completely maddened by it all. She endlessly makes cursed sweets for the dead, whispering into the empty void for Ria and Neha to come and eat. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. In a complex web of revenge where every single person loses either their life or their mind, who is the real victim here, and who is the true monster? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next one.